The quietly brilliant Tim Robbins. A look back at one of Hollywood's greatest bygone stars.
Mr. Hadley, do you trust your wife?
Oh, that's funny.
When examining the most popular movies of all time, what often links them together is the ability to introduce and create generational actors that would go on to define film for decades to come. Be it Orson Welles in Citizen Kane, 1941, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in The Godfather Duology, 1972 and 1974, or Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in Titanic, 1997. More often than not, the emergent stars of the largest films go on to carve out the largest careers.
Mom always said there's an awful lot you can tell about a person by their shoes.
But while Tim Robbins has certainly avoided fading into obscurity, the star of the extraordinarily beloved top-rated film on IMDb, The Shawshank Redemption, 1994, never truly rose to the same popularly celebrated heights of some of his contemporaries, forming an instantly memorable impression in smaller bit roles throughout the late 1980s and inspiring big-name directing talents like Adrian Lyne, Robert Altman, and Joel Coen enough to give him the chance to test his chops in starring roles. Robbins' offbeat stewardship and uniquely commanding screen presence helped distinguish him from the fold and cement him as one of the most influential filmic figures of the past quarter century.
678-704-9 Alpha/6. That is your employee number. It will not be repeated.
Despite boasting an immensely impressive body of work, featuring roles in some of the most culturally and historically significant films of all time, Robbins has inexplicably seen both his fame and cinematic output fizzle as of late. From stage to soundstage, Bull Durham and Jacob's Ladder. Robbins began acting on stage as a young teenager for New York's Theater for the New City, eventually setting his sights on the silver screen and making his way to Los Angeles for college at the UCLA Film School.
This has ever happened before or since, but I wrote the first draft in September and we were shooting by February.
Much like many other young and opportunistic actors of the time, Robbins turned to the frontier landscape of network sitcom television after graduating in 1981. Amassing guest appearances in shows like Saint Elsewhere, 1982 through 1988, Moonlighting, 1985 through 1989, and The Love Boat, 1977 through 1986. Aside from a minuscule part in the cult classic fighter pilot film Top Gun, 1986, alongside Tom Cruise, Robbins' first real entry into Hollywood came in 1988 in the form of the baseball comedy Bull Durham.
God, the sucker teed off in that like he knew I was gonna throw a fastball.
He did know.
How?
I told him.
The film saw Kevin Costner star as a veteran MLB catcher, Crash Davis, called down to the minor league team, the Durham Bulls, to mentor a rowdy young pitcher named Nuke LaLoosh, played by Robbins. Both men are romantically pitted against each other by a vivacious groupie played by Robbins' later wife and frequent collaborator, Susan Sarandon. Sports Illustrated ranked the film the #1 greatest sports movie of all time, and Robbins' performance, while ultimately in support of Costner and Sarandon, was one of its most enduring characteristics.
Huh? I want to bring the heater to announce my presence with authority.
To announce your what?
Announce my presence with authority.
Robbins used the momentum from this role to break into the more serious side of acting in Adrian Lyne's shockingly horrific nightmare, Jacob's Ladder, 1990, about a Vietnam War veteran succumbing to an intense battle with PTSD, as well as something altogether more sinister. Lyne was fresh off the back of the 6 Oscar-nominated smash hit Fatal Attraction, starring Michael Douglas and Glenn Close, and used some of that goodwill with the studio to greenlight the deeply upsetting kaleidoscope of psychological terror and take a big swing on a relatively unknown newcomer to Hollywood in the lead role.
If you've made your peace, then the devils are really angels, freeing you from the earth.
Rife with spiritual symbolism all the way up to its title, Jacob's Ladder being a biblical story referring to dreams as the meeting place between heaven and earth. The film often purposefully disorients the audience and viscerally blurs the line between hallucination and reality. This led to a somewhat tepid response from audiences, citing the collective uncomfortability of the viewing experience. Nonetheless, Robbins was consistently cited as an intricately detailed performer who more than carried the heavy burden the film placed on his shoulders. A nearly unrivaled 90s filmography, The Player and The Shawshank Redemption. Few actors have recorded a more prolific decade than Robbins did in the 1990s. After Jacob's Ladder, the actor appeared in a small but memorable role in Spike Lee's Jungle Fever as the boss of Wesley Snipes' character Flipper Purify. Following that film, Robbins began a string of 3 collaborations with the legendary Maverick film director of Nashville, 1975, and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971, Robert Altman.
Dick Mellon called me in on this. Here's the situation. They've got a witness, and they want you to do a lineup. Now, if you say no, they'll arrest you, I'm certain of that.
First came the release of the much-celebrated The Player, 1992, for which Robbins won a Golden Globe for Best Actor. The film saw him take on the role of cold and apathetic studio executive Griffin Mills as he embarks on a bitingly satirical descent into the underbelly of Hollywood and the dark side of the movies. He later teamed with Altman in the much-celebrated Los Angeles ensemble piece Shortcuts, 1993, starring Julianne Moore and Robert Downey Jr., as well as the oft-maligned fashion show murder mystery Pret-a-Porter, 1994, starring Marcello Mastroianni and Sophia Loren.
I thought you said you didn't drink.
I said I shouldn't drink.
Robbins was again selected as a leading man by one of Hollywood's most influential writer-director teams, Joel and Ethan Coen. The pair cast the actor as the aloof yet ambitious lead of their eccentric 1994 comedy film, The Hudsucker Proxy, pitting Robbins against a villainous Paul Newman and a fast-talking Jennifer Jason Leigh. All of these films, fascinating as they may be in their own right, were dwarfed in comparison to Robbins' next film release, The Shawshank Redemption. The feature directorial debut from Hungarian-American director Frank Darabont, the film was a loose adaptation of legendary author Stephen King's novella, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption.
Get busy living. You get busy dying.
In an exceedingly contentious audition process, Robbins won the role over Hollywood icons like Gene Hackman and Robert Duvall, as well as young stars like Tom Hanks, Nicolas Cage, and Johnny Depp. The film follows Andy Dufresne's life sentencing at the Shawshank State Penitentiary for the murder of his wife and her lover, as well as his 2 decades of incarceration at the prison. Dufresne befriends inmate and smuggler Red Redding, played exceptionally by Morgan Freeman, and aids the prison's warden in a money laundering scheme.
I send that money out into the real world, and when it comes back,
Clean as a virgin's honey pot.
cleaner.
Very few films possess even half as many iconic scenes, lines, and visuals as The Shawshank Redemption, and fewer still can reliably garner as sincere an emotional reaction as the film does from its first frame to its chillingly perfect last. A brief but memorable career in the director's chair, Bob Roberts and Dead Man Walking. In the midst of his rise in front of the camera, Robbins began an illustrious, if not short-lived, stint behind the camera as both the writer and director.
Talks about the long game, not immediate satisfaction.
In 1992, Robbins released his feature debut, the roarest political mockumentary, Bob Roberts. The film follows Robbins as the eponymous Roberts, a popular far-right folk singer, contra Bob Dylan, in the midst of a vivacious campaign for the Pennsylvania Senate. With a cast of Alan Rickman as Roberts' shady campaign manager, one Carlo Esposito as the fiercely devoted journalist bent on uncovering Roberts' demons, and Jack Black in his first ever screen performance as a fanatical acolyte of the divisively messianic politician. The film was made to appear as an actual documentary composed by a fictitiously famous documentarian, given exclusive access to the Roberts campaign, and the increasingly fervent events that surround it.
Get this straight, Jack. I didn't ramble. I didn't roam. No siree. No box cars or park benches. No panhandling for me.
What follows is an unquestionably audacious but unapologetically impassioned look at the debasement of the American political system that has grown exponentially more relevant with age. Robbins followed this film up with an even more critically and commercially successful film, Dead Man Walking, 1995. This film saw Robbins' then-wife, Susan Sarandon, portray a spiritual advisor to Sean Penn's death row inmate, fighting for a final appeal in the days before his execution.
Nobody ever called me no son of God before. Called me a son of you-know-what a lot of times, never no son of God.
Sarandon won the Academy Award for Best Actress for the film, and Robbins received a nomination for Best Director. While Robbins did go on to direct one final film, 1999's Cradle Will Rock, Dead Man Walking remained the high point of his directorial career and a long-lasting achievement in filmmaking. Life after winning an Oscar, Mystic River, and beyond. While Robbins didn't win the Academy Award for Dead Man Walking, the actor finally got hold of the Golden Statue 6 years later for his first and only acting nomination in Clint Eastwood's Mystic River, 2003.
Lady, I thought I was turning into him. I didn't kill Katie.
Eastwood's film surrounded a trio of lapsed childhood friends living in Boston, brought back together due to a family tragedy in one of the men's lives. Sean Penn, who also won an Academy Award for the film, portrayed the vengeful former racketeer Jimmy Markham. Kevin Bacon played the police detective investigating the heinous crime, Sean Devine, and Robin served as the sheepish Dave Boyle, still tortured by a horrible incident that took place when the three were children. A decidedly bleak and surprisingly unsettling look at the corrosiveness of fractured masculinity and repressive fatalism, the film proved a smashing success and finally catapulted Robbins into the pantheon of Oscar winners.
Blood in the trunk of the car wasn't B negative.
I don't know anything about any blood in the trunk of the car.
As can often be the case after winning an Academy Award, Robbins' career took a turn in a very different direction. The actor began appearing in less and less films, and those he did, such as Jon Favreau's Zathura, A Space Adventure, 2005, and Martin Campbell's disastrous Green Lantern, 2011, were often failures amongst critics and general audiences alike. Despite interesting performances in the exceptional yet underseen HBO original political series The Brink, 2015, and Todd Haynes' legal thriller Dark Waters, 2019, the actor has taken a backseat in Hollywood in the past decade.
But that's not fair.
To whom?
To anyone.
I have to work.
While Robbins may not be on the same run of cinematic classics as he was before, that should not take away from the legacy the actor has created, nor his hard-won standings in film